If you had $150, then you could buy a ball python. If you had $300, then you could buy a leopard gecko. If you had $500, then you could buy a sugar glider. If you had $800, then you could buy a finnick fox. If you had $1,000, then you could buy a capuchin monkey. If you had $1,500, then you could buy a serval. If you had $2,000, then you could buy a wallaby. If you had $3,000, then you could buy a sloth. If you had $4,000, then you could buy a kinkajou. If you had $5,000, then you could buy a chimpanzee. If you had $7,000, then you could buy a zebra. If you had $10,000, then you could buy a giraffe. If you had $15,000, then you could buy a polar bear. If you had $25,000, then you could buy an elephant. If you had $250,000, then you could buy a white tiger.